Are you planning to cross the Atlantic with your dog but don't want to risk its life by flying it in cargo? We faced the same concern with our dog, Dory, and found a solution by taking a cruise on Cunard's Queen Mary 2 from Brooklyn, New York to Hamburg, Germany in October 2024. In this video, we will discuss some of the prerequisites for bringing your dog to Europe, show how Dory was treated during the trip, and show why this method is much more comfortable for a dog than flying in a cabin, in the hold, or as cargo. We will also cover how we obtained a pet passport for Dory from a German veterinarian in Hamburg. We will not cover every dog export requirement, as that would make the video quite long. If you need more detailed information, feel free to leave a comment, and we will be happy to provide additional details. When it comes to crossing the Atlantic on a cruise with a dog, Cunard's Queen Mary 2 is the only option. It is also the only ocean liner in the world, offering regular transatlantic crossings between Southampton and New York City, with several sailings a year from Brooklyn, New York to Southampton, UK. On some voyages, it continues to Hamburg, Germany, which is the route we took. The first step is to book your cruise. If you remember only one thing from this video, let it be this: book early. Kennels are limited, with just 24 available, and large dogs require 2 spots, which means the ship can only accommodate 12 to 24 dogs. Since this is the only ship offering transatlantic crossings with pets, these spots are highly sought after and fill up fast. We booked our cruise within the first hour after registration opened in December 2022, nearly 2 years before our cruise date, and still ended up on the kennel waitlist, only securing a spot in November 2023. Book as early as possible and stay on the waiting list, as cancellations happen frequently. As for the cost, our dog Dory is a boxer mix and is considered a large dog. She therefore required 2 kennels, with each kennel costing $1,000, totaling $2,000. With an additional $4,000 for our room, our total cost for this trip came to $6,000. The standard journey from Brooklyn to Southampton takes 7 days, with an additional 2 days to reach Hamburg. On our October 2024 cruise, the ship departed Brooklyn 2 days early, extending our trip to 11 days, with stops in Newport, Rhode Island, and Boston, Massachusetts. Now let's talk about the general requirements for exporting a pet to another country, which is a long and challenging process regardless of the transportation method. We spent countless hours navigating instructions and requirements, and had a few sleepless nights as our sailing date approached. We could have left Dory with our adult daughter instead of going through this hassle, but Dory is an important part of our life, and we could not imagine leaving her behind. If you are considering a similar journey, be prepared. It is not an easy process. However, leaving your pet behind can be even harder, and we are very glad we went through it all to have Dory with us in Europe. Your pet must have a microchip to be exported to Europe. It is recommended to have an ISO-compliant microchip, and it usually is. However, if your pet has a non-ISO-compliant chip, you will need to travel with your own scanner to read it, or have a second ISO-compliant microchip implanted. The rabies vaccine is a critical component of the health certificate. We encountered an issue with Dory's rabies vaccine due to the difference between primary and secondary vaccinations. A primary rabies vaccine is a 1-year vaccine, and export requirements specify that it must be given after the pet's microchip is implanted. Secondary vaccines, administered after the primary vaccine, are valid for 3 years as long as there's no lapse in coverage. Since Dory received her primary rabies vaccine before her microchip was implanted, we had to give her a new primary vaccine before we could begin the health certificate process. The health certificate must be issued by a USDA-accredited veterinarian. According to the USDA, 80% of vets in the US hold this accreditation, so check with your vet to confirm. If they're not USDA accredited, you can find a list of accredited vets on the USDA website. The veterinarian submits the health certificate to the USDA through an online system. However, the issued certificate must be a physical paper copy, embossed by the USDA and mailed to you, so you bring it on your trip. The certificate must be signed by the USDA within 10 days of your flight, or, if cruising, 10 days before embarkation. The 10-day window to complete the health certificate process is very short and by far the most stressful part of this experience. The USDA approval takes time, and communication on the progress is often lacking. Within this period, you have at least one weekend and possibly holidays, which further reduces processing time. In our case, a hurricane hit Florida where the USDA office is located while we were in process, causing additional delays due to office closures. Once the certificate is approved, you still depend on a shipping company to deliver the physical document, adding more risk and time to the process. We had the embossed health certificate shipped to our hotel in Brooklyn via next-day air service, and it arrived 2 days before our departure. The moment we held that certificate in our hands was as exhilarating as you could imagine. Please note that if you are traveling to the UK, a tapeworm treatment is also required at least 24 hours before departure, but no more than 5 days before. We did not need it since we were heading to Hamburg. On the day of departure, we arrived at the terminal just before noon. After completing the passport check and receiving our boarding passes, an employee approached us and directed us to the dog check-in area. A couple of staff members reviewed Dory's health certificate and verified her microchip number. They also took the USDA health certificate so they could scan it. After all the time we had spent obtaining it, handing over this document was nerve-wracking. Thankfully, we got it back a few days into the cruise and kept it safely in our room's safe deposit box until the end of the trip. Shortly after, we met Oliver, the kennel master. With over a decade of experience running the kennels, his dedication and love for dogs truly shines through. Before each voyage, he receives a list of pets and makes it a point to greet each one by name. For example, he knew Dory was a boxer, and even though he had never met us, he confidently approached and asked, "This is Dory, isn't it?" Naturally, he made sure to greet Dory warmly as well. After all the pets were checked in, the pet owners followed the kennel master from the boarding area onto the ship and up to the kennels on deck 12. Each dog was placed in its designated kennel, and Oliver made sure to ask each owner about their pet's feeding schedule and preferences. Since it was already afternoon on the first day, the schedule differed slightly from the rest of the cruise. We were asked to leave and told we could return by 5 p.m. During the cruise, visiting hours for the pets are from 8 a.m. to noon, 3 p.m. to 6 p.m., and 7:30 p.m. to 8:30 p.m. You decide how much time to spend with your pet during these hours. On our cruise, some families stayed with their dog for the entire visiting period, while others visited for just part of the time. In the morning and afternoon, you can sit outside with your dog to enjoy the sun and fresh air. You also have the option to walk your dog along the narrow deck. On colder days, after ensuring your dog has had a chance to stretch and take care of business, you can relax with them inside. The 7:30 to 8:30 p.m. visit is a bit different from the earlier ones. During this time, you can walk your dog on the open deck located next to the kennels. Although it was often windy and dark, it was a great opportunity for Dory to stretch her legs and enjoy a bit of freedom. The dogs pee and poop during the walks on the kennel deck. There are no grassy areas, which was an initial concern for us, but Dory did just fine, as did all the other dogs. After the dog does its business, the kennel staff will clean it up, and they specifically asked us not to do it ourselves, as they had issues in the past with helpful guests who messed things up. While we felt bad letting someone else pick up Dory's poop, we understood and tried to enjoy not picking up poop for 11 days. We know it sounds really hard, but we somehow survived it. At night and outside of visiting hours, the dogs stay in their kennels. Each dog has bed and water in the kennel, and there is enough room to move around. Feeding your pet on board, the ship is as important as when it is at home, and Cunard does a great job managing it. A few months before departure, Cunard sent us information about the available dog food options and asked how much food Dory would need. The food supply is included in the cost of the trip, but we also had the option to bring our own dog food. The kennel master is responsible for feeding the dogs, but if your pet requires a medication, you will need to administer it yourself. If a dog has diarrhea, the kennel master can help by providing rice and pumpkin. The kennel staff was always kind and caring, both to the dogs and the owners. We felt that they looked after our dogs as if they were their own, which gave us great peace of mind. Unsurprisingly, both Oliver and John have dogs of their own back home. We already miss them. After 11 days at sea that felt like an eternity, we finally arrived in Hamburg. Oliver instructed us to come to the kennels by 8 a.m. that day. While waiting for approval to disembark, we had the chance to walk our dogs on deck. Just like on the first day when we boarded together, we left the ship as a group. Following Oliver, we made our way off the ship and into the terminal, where the border control officer checked our passports. We then proceeded to complete the dog import process. The animal control officers verified Dory's microchip number, reviewed the health certificate, and added their signature. This was the third and final signature on Dory's health certificate, following the vet's and the USDA's signatures. At this point, you might wonder if cruising is the right choice. For us, it was. While cruising is not our preferred way to travel and 11 days at sea felt endless, our dog's health and safety were our top priorities. We were too worried about the risks of her flying in cargo. On the cruise, she was happy, and knowing she was safe made us happy too. Since we planned to travel through Europe for a while, we obtained a pet passport for Dory. It is not a requirement, as the health certificate is valid for 4 months, at least at the time of recording this video. However, if you plan to stay in Europe for a longer period of time and travel between countries, getting a pet passport is required. A few months before our trip, we arranged an appointment with an English-speaking vet in Hamburg. We had communicated via email prior to the appointment to confirm he could issue the pet passport. Accustomed to shorter vet visits in the US, we were pleasantly surprised to spend the entire appointment talking with the vet. He took his time getting to know Dory, thoroughly examining her during the visit. He also shared insights into the differences in dog health conditions between the USA and Germany and patiently answered all our questions. We never felt rushed. After examining Dory, gathering information from us about her, and reviewing her health certificate, the vet issued her pet passport. We will provide a link to this vet and highly recommend him and his staff. If you have any questions about obtaining a health certificate or the cruise experience from a dog's perspective, feel free to leave a comment. We are happy to help and will do our best to answer any questions you may have. If you found this video helpful, please consider liking it. We will be continuing our travels through Europe with Dory, and we'll be sharing more videos about our experiences. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell to stay updated on new content.